On June 14, 1951, Remington Rand introduces UNIVAC, the prototype large-scale business computer. Their first customer, the United States Census Bureau. The future of the computer is unparalleled in 20th century technology. All the power of this gigantic device is packed into a single microprocessor of tiny silicon chips. Microtechnology revolutionizes science and industry. A sewing machine is programmed to make intricate designs. A missile is guided to its target. High-tech microcomputers are reaching into areas of everyday life and changing lifestyles for every one of us.
Eight days after he was abruptly removed from his Korean command by President Truman on April 19, 1951, General Douglas MacArthur addressed a joint session of the Congress.
Efforts have been made to distort my position. It has been said in effect that I was a warmonger. Nothing could be further from the truth. You cannot appease or otherwise surrender to communism in Asia without simultaneously undermining our efforts to halt its advance in Europe. The world has turned over many times since I took the oath on the plain at West Point, and the hopes and dreams have long since vanished. But I still remember the refrain of one of the most popular barrack ballads of that day. And like the old soldier of that ballad, I now close my military career and just fade away.
Election year 1952. The Korean War becomes a heated campaign issue for Democratic candidate Adlai Stevenson and Republican Dwight Eisenhower.
I'm proud that we have had the fortitude to refuse to risk extension of that war despite extreme communist provocation and reckless Republican criticism. Now, where will a new administration begin? It will begin with its president taking a firm, simple resolution. I shall go to Korea.
Eisenhower's war hero image represents hope to a nation at war. He scores an easy victory over Stevenson, winning 442 electoral votes to Stevenson's 89.
An obscure Pacific island called Alujilab, November 1st, 1952. Here, a long plywood canal led to a tar paper shack called a cab. Inside was Mike, history's first hydrogen bomb. Navy ships surrounded the island as scientists deployed a mini armada to record radioactivity and shock waves. Buoys and floats, populated with plant and animal life, also were stationed at fixed distances from Alujilab to measure the effects of the blast. And remote-controlled cameras were set up to film the spectacular show. Mike would be mightier than 20 million tons of TNT and brighter than 1,000 suns. The blast wiped Alujilab from the face of the earth. Mankind had entered the hydrogen age.
March 26, 1953. Dr. Jonas Salk of the University of Pittsburgh reports in the Journal of the American Medical Association that he has successfully tested on 90 adults and children a vaccine against polio. The Salk vaccine is certified as a prevention of infantile paralysis within months of Salk's report. A massive child inoculation program is quickly initiated in schools throughout the United States. This vaccine kills viruses that cause the crippling disease that had affected millions, among them President Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
In 1954, Senator Joseph McCarthy investigated possible subversive activity in the Army. Legal counsel for the Army was Joseph Welch. On June 9th, McCarthy accused a young Welch aide of communist ties. Pained and outraged, Mr. Welch replied,
"Little did I dream you could be so reckless and so cruel as to do an injury to that lad. If it were in my power to forgive you for your reckless cruelty, I would do so. I like to think I'm a gentle man, but your forgiveness will have to come from someone other than me."
Mr. Chairman. Now, I just give this man's record.
Senator, may we not drop this? Have you no sense of decency, sir? At long last, have you left no sense of decency?
You brought him down, did you not, to act as your assistant?
Mr. McCarthy, if there is a God in heaven, it will do neither you nor your cause any good. I will not discuss it further. You, Mr. Chairman, may, if you will, call the next witness.
Are there any questions to come from the members of the church? Murrow is the symbol, the leader, and the cleverest of the jackal pack.
On April 6, 1954, Senator Joseph McCarthy appeared on television to answer charges levied against him by CBS News correspondent Edward R. Murrow.
Now, Mr. Murrow said on this program, and I quote, he said, "The actions of the junior senator from Wisconsin have given considerable comfort to the enemy." That is the language of our statute of treason, rather strong language. If I am giving comfort to our enemies, I ought not to be in the Senate. If, on the other hand, Mr. Murrow is giving comfort to our enemies, he ought not to be brought into the homes of millions of Americans by the Columbia Broadcasting System.
In connection with that, I would like to repeat one thing that I said. I said when the record is finally written, as it will be one day, it will answer the question, who has helped the communist cause and who has served his country better, Senator McCarthy or I? I would like to be remembered, if at all, by the answer to that one question.
We will continue to walk and shall rise.
After a year-long bus boycott organized by Dr. Martin Luther King, his first major civil rights battle was won when on November 13, 1956, the Supreme Court ruled against segregated public transportation.
We are not going back to the buses bragging about a victory being won. This will be the defeat of everything that we've done for the last 12 months. Each of you has the responsibility to serve as a committee of one, to see that we act right on the buses. In the light of this decision, we can well map out the strategy for the future of integration.
She was the sex symbol of the 50s.
Miss Monroe will have nothing to say this morning. All I can say as her attorney...
Unhappiness was written all over her face at the failure of her second marriage to baseball star Joe DiMaggio. In contrast, she was the picture of happiness 2 years later at the announcement of her marriage to playwright Arthur Miller in 1956.
You didn't know when you were going to get married. Do you know today?
It'll be in July before the 13th.
No definite date has been set.
I haven't got one yet.
Where are you going to be married?
I wish I could tell you at this moment. I'm arranging, and I can't really tell you right now. I'll let you know that.
Have you received an
The marriage ended in divorce 6 years later. The following year, in 1962, she died of an overdose of sleeping pills.
Little Rock, Arkansas, September 1957. Governor Orville Faubus ordered the National Guard to keep black students from enrolling in Little Rock Central High. Black activists were insisting on long-delayed compliance with the Supreme Court's order to desegregate in 1954. As the first black students appeared, the governor gave his reasons for resistance.
I will not force my people to integrate against their will. I believe in the democratic processes and principles of government wherein the people determine the problems on the local level, which is their right.
As a group of black students tried to enter the school through a side door, violence flared in the nearby streets. Guardsmen, police, and state troopers moved quickly to arrest those attacking blacks and their sympathizers. After 3 weeks of near anarchy, President Eisenhower ordered federal troops into Little Rock. The 101st Airborne Division successfully enforced the Supreme Court order, but the fact that the Army was required to enforce civil law in this country made news in many nations of the world. When the Soviet Union launched the Sputnik in October of 1957, the United States was thrown into a panic of defeat. One U.S. senator wanted to declare a national week of shame as the Sputnik's steady, mocking radio signal beeped triumphantly back to Earth. All hopes rested with the Vanguard, set to launch America's first satellite on December 6, 1957. Americans confidently awaited the liftoff that would restore their pride. The effect was devastating. Although the U.S. would launch its own satellite 1 month later, it would be a long time before Americans forgot that historical moment when they were number 2. In 1958, reporters asked Private Elvis Presley what he'd do if rock and roll was out of style when he got back from Army duty overseas.
Well, I would probably try acting. I mean, I would try to make good as an actor, although it's a tough field to break into.
Elvis had never been much of an actor, but even during his 2 years of Army service, his earnings from records alone totaled nearly $2 million. He was and still is the best-selling single recording artist in history. When he returned to the States in 1960, rock and roll was still very popular, and Elvis was asked if Army life had changed his thoughts about returning to that field.
It hasn't changed my mind because I was in tanks for a long time, you see, and they rock and roll quite a bit.
He went back to the same old grind, playing hard at it until the early 1970s. Since then, his appearances have been sporadic.
Not often in the story of mankind does a man arrive on earth who is both steel and velvet, who is as hard as rock and soft drifting fog, who holds in his heart and mind the paradox of terrible storm and peace, unspeakable and perfect. The incomparable Abraham Lincoln, born 150 years ago this day, is an approach, if not a perfect realization of this character.
In 1959, Carl Sandburg, poet-historian, delivered a memorable Lincoln Day eulogy before a session of Congress.
Millions there are who take Lincoln as a personal treasure, He had something they would like to see spread everywhere over the world. Democracy. We can't find the words to say exactly what it is, but he had it.